We can very easily look at what we have and think that we do not have enough. It's not enough. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough strength. Don't have enough resources. Don't have enough time. Don't have enough whatever. Okay. And in 2 Kings chapter 4, we're going to unpack a desperate widow, a miraculous jar of oil, and a barren woman receiving an unexpected promise. We're going to see a child restored to life, a starving community fed through a miracle. I'm going to give you one practical action to help you bring what little you have to God instead of focusing on what you lack. In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, this show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps you out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. So a little bit of context here. 2 Kings chapter 4 is a collection of 4 stories from Elisha's prophetic ministry. And each of these 4 stories is going to reveal God's power and compassion in different circumstances. A widow of one of the prophets faces crushing debt and the threat of losing her children. So Elisha multiplies the small amount of oil that she has. A Shunammite woman generously provides hospitality for Elisha, and God promised her a son despite her barrenness. When the child later dies, Elisha prays and God restores him to life. During a famine, Elisha makes a poisonous stew safe to eat and later multiplies a small supply of bread so that 100 people can eat with food left over. So the chapter is repeatedly showing how God enters into situations where human resources appear insufficient and he completely transforms them through his power. And it sets up someone to come later in the New Testament. So let's read verses 1 to 7. The focus here is going to be on the widow's oil being multiplied. And my question to you is, why does God begin the miracle with the little oil she already possesses? Verse 1. Now the wife of a member of the company of prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant my husband is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, but a creditor has come to take my 2 children as slaves." Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" She answered, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." He said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not just a few. Then go in, shut the door behind you and your children, and start pouring into all these vessels. When each is full, set it aside." So she left him and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." But he said to her, "There are no more." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your children can live on the rest." Alright, so we see that Elisha asked the widow what she already has. Okay, so that's interesting because God is working through Elisha to ask her what is already within her hands. Even though she feels completely empty, she actually possesses a very small amount of oil, a very small amount. That's also important. And Elisha tells her, listen, gather empty vessels and pour. And the miracle happens through the ordinary resources that she overlooked. That is interesting, okay? So there's a deeper principle here that just because we lack something doesn't mean we have nothing to offer God. That is interesting. He can take something small and use it according to his greater purposes. Okay? Great things can be accomplished through insignificant means. The other thing is the oil stops when there's no more vessels. And that is emphasizing something as well. The relationship between the woman's preparation and the miracle itself. She is instructed, gather vessels, and the oil continues flowing until there's no more available containers. So this is not saying, oh, you prepare well, you'll become really wealthy and God will abundantly provide everything for you. Prosperity gospel. No. What this is suggesting is that our job is to obey. Obey and listen and let God take care of the rest. That is the motto here that we're understanding. Just listen to what Elisha tells you, do it, and see what happens. Okay, let's read verses 8 to 37 now. We're going to focus on the Shunammite woman and her son. Verse 8, One day Elisha was passing through Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to have a meal. So, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for a meal. She said to her husband, Look, I am sure that this man who regularly passes our way is a holy man of God. Let us take a small roof chamber with walls and put there for him a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so that he can stay there whenever he comes to us. One day, when he came there, he went up to the chamber and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite woman." When he had called her, she stood before him. He said to him, "Say to her, since you have taken all this trouble for us, what may be done for you? Would you have a word spoken on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" She answered, "I live among my own people." He said, "What then may be done for her?" Gehazi answered, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." He said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood at the door. He said, "At this season, in due time, you shall embrace a son." She replied, "No, my lord, O man of God, do not deceive your servant." The woman conceived and bore a son at that season in due time, as Elisha had declared to her. When the child was older, he went out one day to his father among the reapers. He complained to his father, "Oh, my head, my head!" The father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." He carried him and brought him to his mother. The child sat on her lap until noon, and he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, closed the door on him, and left. Then she called to her husband and said, "Send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, so that I may quickly go to the man of God and come back again." He said, "Why go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath." She said, "It will be all right." Then she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Urge the animal on. Do not hold back for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her coming, he said to Gehazi his servant, "Look, there is the Shunammite woman. Run at once to meet her, and say to her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is the child all right?'" She answered, "It is all right." When she came to the man of God at the mountain, she caught hold of his feet. Gehazi approached to push her away, but the man of God said, "Let her alone, for she is in bitter distress. The Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me." Then she said, "Did I ask my Lord for a son? Did I not say, 'Do not mislead me'?" He said to Gehazi, "Gird up your loins, and take my staff in your hand, and go. If you meet anyone, give no greeting, and if anyone greets you, do not answer, and lay my staff on the face of the child." Then the mother of the child said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave without you." So he rose up and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and laid staff on the face of the child, but there was no sound or sign of life. He came back to meet him and told him, "The child has not awakened." When Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. So he went in and closed the door on the two of them and prayed to the Lord. Then he got up on the bed and lay upon the child, putting his mouth upon his mouth, his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And while he lay bent over him, the flesh of the child became warm. He got down, walked once to and fro in the room, then got up again and bent over him. The child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite woman." So he called her. When she came to him, he said, "Take your son." She came and fell at his feet, bowing to the ground. Then she took her son and left. Okay, so a lot of things happened in this section. The first thing is that the Shunammite woman provides Elisha with hospitality without initially asking for anything. And it appears, at least, very selfless, right? She recognizes Elisha. She says that he is a holy man. He creates a room for him, and this is only because she wants to honor God's servant. And unlike the widow, who approaches Elisha because of desperate need, the Shunammite woman gives before she asks anything, right? So this is interesting, that she is generous right at the beginning, not expecting anything in return. But Elisha asks her, "Look, I want to help you in some way. I want to give you something." And we see that there is a promise here, a promise of a son. The woman has no child. She's barren. And the text constantly indicates that her husband is old. So what we see here is that there's a promise for a son that is a deep longing, right? And that's beyond any human possibility, because She's old. They're well past their prime, to put it lightly. And the gift is more meaningful because the woman doesn't initially ask for it. God sees a need she has not demanded him to meet yet. And what's interesting as well is we see she does have a son, he is born, but then the son later dies after God gave him to her. So what's going on here? Like, why would you give the son and then just take his life away, just like that? And this is what makes the story quite emotionally powerful, because it seems initially like the gift was removed, but it's actually the beginning, right? She immediately goes to Elisha. She doesn't actually abandon faith completely. She doesn't say anything. In fact, if you really think about it, no one really rises from the dead, right? So in this case, she would probably thought, this is it. It's over. This person, this child that I have is dead, and now there's nothing I can do about it. But faith is tested not only when we lack God's blessing, but also when something God has given us is suddenly threatened or lost. This is when we can trust in God again. And Elisha prays so intensely before the child is restored, right? He doesn't treat God's power like some sort of a magical trick, right? He withdraws, he prays, he depends on God wholeheartedly, and the restoration of the child is ultimately God's work. The prophet here, Elisha, he is powerful because he is dependent, not because he has any independent supernatural authority. Okay, now let's read verses 38 to 44. Focus here is going to be on the poisonous stew and multiplied bread. Verse 38. When Elisha returned to Gilgal, there was a famine in the land. As the company of prophets was sitting before him, he said to his servant, "Put the large pot on, and make some stew for the company of prophets." One of them went out into the field to gather herbs. He found a wild vine, and gathered from it a lapful of wild gourds, and came and cut them up into the pot of stew, not knowing what they were. They served some for the men to eat, but while they were eating the stew, they cried out, "O man of God, there is death in the pot." They could not eat it. He said, "Then bring some flour." He threw it into the pot and said, "Serve the people and let them eat." And there was nothing harmful in the pot. Verse 42. A man came from Baal Shalisha, bringing food from the first fruits to the man of God, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. Elisha said, "Give it to the people and let them eat." But his servant said, "How can I set this before 100 people?" So he repeated, "Give it to the people and let them eat. For thus says the Lord, they shall eat and have some left." He set it before them, they ate and had some left, according to the word of the Lord. Okay, so final part of the chapter, we see Elisha throws flour into the poisonous stew. And the reason is, again, this is another miracle here. God acts through Elisha's prophetic instruction, and the flour becomes the means through which God makes the food safe again. So there is a pattern here that is being repeated throughout all the miracles in this chapter, that God, what does he do? He uses ordinary things while accomplishing extraordinary results. He tells the servants, right? Elisha tells the servants to feed 100 men with 20 loaves. The arithmetic isn't adding up here, but God's promise says they will eat and shall leave thereof. Let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. Well, if there was a chapter in 2 Kings that anticipates Jesus Christ most strongly, it would be this one, because we see Elisha multiplies oil, he provides food during a famine, and becomes the instrument through which a dead child receives life. But Jesus is the greater Elisha. He is greater than Elisha. He doesn't merely multiply food. He is the bread of life. He doesn't restore one child. He raises the dead, all of the dead, who come and follow him, and he ultimately conquers death itself. The parallels here are especially clear when Elisha feeds 100 men with a small amount of bread, and Jesus later feeds thousands with a few loaves of bread and fish. So the stories are both revealing something about God's ability to provide beyond human calculation. Yes, you may feel like you're not sufficient, but neither was the bread and the loaves. And this is why we read in the New Testament John chapter 6, verse 35, my favorite Bible verse of all time. We'll talk about it when we get to John chapter 6 in a few years. But Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. What is the implication here? That the physical bread that we see points towards the deeper gift of Jesus Christ himself, through whom humanity receives eternal life. The widow's oil is going to run out. The Shunammite woman's food is limited, and her son will eventually die, maybe not now, but later. And the crowd's bread, it seems insufficient, but Christ offers something that never runs out, himself. Okay, so how can we apply this chapter in our everyday lives? We use and bring what God has already given to us. We have been given gifts, we have been given opportunities, we've been given abilities, and we can dismiss them as insignificant. How easy it is. Oh, everyone else gets this. Oh, like these gifts, everyone else has them. I'm not the best, I'm not this or that. No. Every single gift that you have is a glorious gift from God, right? And God can use it faithfully, and God can allow you to use it faithfully. But you need to stop waiting until you have enough. You need to trust before you see. God doesn't have to reveal the entire plan to you. Just take the next faithful step that you already know you should take by trusting and believing in God, praying unceasingly, and moving forward. All right, so that's it for this episode. Next time, we're going to come to 2 Kings chapter 5, where Naaman, who is a powerful Syrian commander, discovers that his greatest problem, cannot be solved by status, wealth, military power, none of that. And we're going to see his encounter with Elisha and the humbling command to wash in the Jordan. And we're going to see Gehazi's tragic greed and discover why God's grace always begins by asking us to humble ourselves before him. You don't want to miss it. So we learned in this episode that God can use the small things we already possess, that faithful obedience comes before provision, that God gives us gifts that can be tested through unexpected loss, that miracles point beyond God's servants to God himself, that human calculations never limit God's power, and that Elisha's miracles all point forward to Jesus Christ, who is the bread of life and the ultimate conqueror of death. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.